In March 1942, Britain had a problem. Germany's largest battleship was threatening to destroy every supply convoy crossing the Atlantic. The only dry dock that could repair her sat in heavily defended France, surrounded by 5,000 German troops. Britain's solution was to fill an old destroyer with 4.5 tons of hidden explosives, sail it directly into the dock under enemy fire, and wait. What happened the next morning changed the entire war at sea. Nobody saw it coming. Not even the 300 German officers standing on the deck were spared when it exploded. In the spring of 1942, the Atlantic was bleeding ships. German U-boats prowled beneath the waves, sinking 382 Allied vessels in just 3 months. Every loss meant fewer supplies for Britain, fewer tanks for Russia, and fewer chances to hold the line. But beneath the surface threat, a greater danger loomed: the battleship Tirpitz. Armed with 8 15-inch guns and armor that could shrug off most torpedoes, Tirpitz could turn the tide of the entire war at sea if unleashed on the convoys. The only thing holding her back was the risk of damage far from home. There was just one dry dock on the Atlantic coast capable of repairing a ship of her size, the Normandy dock at Saint-Nazaire. If that dock remained open, Tirpitz could strike, retreat, and return to the fight again and again. The Germans knew this. They stationed 5,000 troops and 28 heavy guns to protect the dock, turning Saint-Nazaire into a fortress. British planners saw the same equation. As long as the dock stood, the Atlantic lifeline was in jeopardy. The fate of the convoys, and perhaps the war itself, hung on a single concrete target behind enemy lines. HMS Campbelltown started life as an obsolete American destroyer, but in March 1942 she became the centerpiece of a plan that bordered on madness. The ship was stripped to her steel bones at John Brown and Company shipyard on the Clyde. Twin funnels were cut away and re-angled, her silhouette sharpened to mimic a Type 1934A destroyer. Camouflage netting and canvas altered the bridge and masts, all to deceive German spotters watching the Loire. But beneath the false skin, the real secret lay in the bow. Lieutenant Nigel Tibbets, just 28 years old, was handed a problem: how to demolish a dock built to survive the Atlantic itself. Tibbets' solution was as inventive as it was deadly. He and his team packed the forward section with a block of cemented explosives, roughly 4.5 tons in all, built from depth charges stripped of their casings and fused into a single monolithic charge. The entire demolition sat behind a concrete bulkhead braced to survive the ramming speed and the shock of impact. At the heart of it, Tibbets installed a pencil fuse, a device set to delay the explosion for 8 to 10 hours. The timing had to be perfect, long enough for the commandos to escape, short enough to catch the Germans off guard. Every bolt, every inch of wiring, every calculation was checked and checked again. The Admiralty signed off in early March 1942. They had less than 4 weeks to turn a worn-out destroyer into a floating bomb, and no room for error. The fate of the Atlantic convoys, and the men who would ride Campbelltown to her final berth, now rested on Tibbets' invention and the nerve of everyone involved. At precisely 1400 hours on March 26th, HMS Campbelltown slipped her moorings, leading a flotilla into the churning Atlantic. Every man aboard knew there would be no turning back. Campbelltown, now unrecognizable beneath her German disguise, carried not only 4.5 tons of hidden explosives, but also the fate of the Atlantic convoys. As dusk fell, the convoy closed on the Loire estuary, engines throttled down to a crawl. Each mile brought them deeper into the gun's shadow. The bridge crew, hands steady on the wheel, watched for the first flicker of searchlights along the French coast. German coastal batteries, commanded by Kapitän Zersay Hans Mecke, spotted the approaching ships. Suspicion flickered, but the British signaled the correct German recognition codes, a calculated risk, buying precious minutes. The flotilla pressed forward, closing the final 1.6 kilometers under mounting tension. Suddenly, the deception shattered. Searchlights locked on. The air erupted with tracer fire. 2 helmsmen were struck down at their posts, the bridge spattered with blood. Lieutenant Tibbets took the wheel himself, steering Campbelltown straight into the storm. At 1:34 in the morning, the battered destroyer rammed the dock gate at 19 knots, the bow crumpling against concrete. The impact was so violent that the hull wedged tight, exactly as planned. German defenders believed the attack had failed, reporting the vessel as a harmless wreck, but beneath the twisted steel, the pencil fuses had already begun their silent countdown. The sacrifice was complete. Campbelltown now sat in the heart of the target, a ticking bomb disguised as defeat. At exactly 10 o'clock in the morning, a shock wave tore through the Normandy dock. The delayed action charge inside HMS Campbelltown's bow erupted with a force that shattered steel, stone, and every illusion of German control. The explosion blew the caisson gate apart, sending a wall of water surging through the dock basin. German officers, engineers, and workers, drawn by curiosity and a sense of triumph, were caught in the blast. Court of Inquiry records later counted nearly 360 German dead, including around 40 officers, in a single instant. The gate collapsed, the basin flooded, and the only Atlantic dry dock capable of sheltering a battleship was wrecked beyond repair. A second blast echoed 2 nights later, as delayed torpedoes set by the commandos detonated near the submarine pens, sowing panic and confusion among the defenders. For the men who had sailed with Campbelltown, the cost was staggering. Of the 611 who embarked, only 228 made it back to Britain. 169 were killed, and 215 became prisoners of war. The raid produced 5 Victoria Crosses, the highest honor for valor. Among them, Sergeant Thomas Durant stood out, a machine gunner who fought on after being shot multiple times, his courage so fierce that the German officer who captured him demanded he be recognized. The dock lay in ruins, the Atlantic lifeline saved, but the names of those who paid for it would echo far longer than the thunder of the blast. Today, the dock remains shattered, the audacity nearly forgotten, yet the Atlantic lifeline survived because 611 men and 4 tons of explosives rewrote the odds. Sacrifice can still change history.